and welcome to another Hip Hughes History Lecture. In this video lecture, we're going to take a look at the essential question, why did the Articles of Confederation fail? So let's get to it. Giddy up. The Articles of Confederation were our first constitution. That's right, folks. We've had two constitutions. We're very much used to hearing the United States Constitution. Well, that puppy was written in 1787. And if you know anything about American history, the year 1776, maybe that rings a bell for you. That's the Revolutionary War and Independence. So for that 11-year period, from 1776 to 1787, the United States was run under the first Constitution.
The Articles of Confederation.
And I'd like to start with kind of like a mantra, something that if you just repeat enough, you probably will get the multiple choice right, but we're obviously going to explain it in depth. And that is, the Articles of Confederation suck because the feds were too weak. The Articles of Confederation suck because the feds were too weak, or the states were too strong. So, in order to understand what that means, we have to understand the word federalism. That's a really big word on the exam in this course. You have to know what federalism is. If you don't know what federalism is, come exam time, you probably should play sick. You should probably get like a cold or the flu. Don't go, because you need to know that word. So, federalism is our form of government, as I sneak over here for a second, right? And basically, the concept is that under colonialism, or the colonial era, the United States, the Americans, the colonists, right, really had kind of like a bad view of what government was, because of the abuses that, you know, the King of England and the English government had kind of done to the Americas. It depends on how you look at it, but no taxation without representation, and the denial of some natural rights, consent of the governed. You know, we really didn't like government. So, in the analogy that I use when I teach that
Is with Ike and Tina Turner.
Tina Turner being the colonist and Ike being the abusive, you know, kind of king of England, and that eventually, what does Tina do? She grows up, right? She reads common sense and she decides, I'm out of here. So now that she's out of here, that's 1776, obviously she has to fight her way out in the Revolutionary War, but she has to now form a new government, right? In a sense, she has to kind of date a new guy. So it's that idea in her head about men, you know, that men are abusive or that government is abusive, that makes her come up with a form of federalism. Because you see, folks, Tina now has the power. So rather than handing all of that power over to some, you know, guy that we really don't know well, she's going to, and here we go with the definition, federalism is the division of power between the federal government, that new guy, and then some just for Tina. Tina's going to be the states in this analogy. Let me do that in one big swoosh. Federalism is the division of power between the feds and the states. So both of our constitutions have had that theory or that enaction of federalism. Today we have, you know, rather powerful federal government. And, you know, we're not going to give viewpoints here, whether it's good or bad, but throughout American history, the federal government has grown in size. And, you know, the states still retain power, marriage laws and schools and, you know, some of these issues. But the federal government is definitely the authority figure in that relationship under most aspects of what we would consider public policy. So when Tina first gets her hands on the power, she's going to form the Articles of, you said it, didn't you? The Articles of Confederation. She's going to rip it like this. Federalism is the division of power between the feds and the states. So the feds are incredibly weak. And now you know why. Tina doesn't like government. She doesn't really trust, you know, federal central authority. So the colonists, when they write the first, you know, Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution, they're going to delegate, give to the federal government very limited power. And the states, the kind of, you know, are going to be like independent nations in a sense. They're going to have not all of the power, but most of the power that today we find in the federal government. So let's take a look at what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Articles of Confederation. A little bit good, A little bit more bad and a lot of ugly. Let me go see if I can go find that right now. So I found it. I found the good, I found the bad, and I found the ugly. And as we dive into that, let's just get some basic structure down. There is a federal government, you know. We said that, federalism is the division of power between there is a little federal government, there's a big state governments going on, but there is a federal government, so we need to look at the structure of that federal government. Basically, there is one branch of government. Today we have three branches. We have legislative, executive, and judicial. There's only the legislative under the Articles of Confederation. There is a Congress with 13 members. Guess what the 13 members represent? Yeah, they represent the 13 states. Every state, big, small, it doesn't matter, gets an equal voice, gets one vote in that government. So that's what it looks like. So good, bad, and ugly. The good is the law. I only go over one because really there is only one fundamentally really good law for the United States government passed under the Articles, and that is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And I'm going to explain why I said it like that in a second. But basically what this law does is it gives the federal government the ability to grow the nation. It is a procedural law that basically sets up a formula for territories to join the United States and become states. So sometimes in class I've said it like the mama can go get pregnant law. Oh, mama can go get pregnant. Oh, Northwest Ordinance 1787. And, that's kind of a strange vocabulary word that'll pop up in the exam. And if you have a lot of facts stuffed in your head, sometimes it's hard to pull that one out. But generally, if you see that word and you say it like I said it, you'll get that pregnancy visualization in your mind. And then maybe the multiple choice will start to kind of pop out. That idea of the United States growing, of the United States being able to eventually, do manifest destiny through Louisiana Purchase and the Mexican War and all that other, stuff that comes later. So from a United States perspective, that's good. If you're a Native American or you're a Mexican, the Northwest Ordinance is probably not a good thing. But let's move on from there. Let's do the bad and the ugly. The bad is the structure itself, kind of the rules of the Articles that really are going to handicap in a sense, the ability of the United States to go forward. So here are just a few of them. Number one, there's no president. Right? If the aliens come down from outer space and say, take me to your leader, there is no leader. There's no court system. There's no ability to tax. The federal government had to ask the states for money. And in a sense, the federal government really has an empty wallet. It has a credit card with no credit on it in a sense. There is no army. The army consisted of the national, kind of what today would be the National Guard, but the 13 states had their own military. There's no monetary system, so there's no national money. There's no ability to control interstate commerce, kind of between the states. Rhode Island, I think, had set up basically its own tax system, that if you wanted to sell goods in Rhode Island, you had to pay Rhode Island money to do that from other states. So those are some of the bad structural aspects. In terms of, passing laws, remember there were only 13 members in Congress, 13 states. You needed 9 out of 13 to pass a law. So that's what's called a supermajority. It's hard enough to get 51%, to do anything. So to get 9 out of 13 made it very difficult to pass laws. To change the Articles of Confederation. Let's say they had a realization that, oh man, that's messed up, we have to change that. You needed all 13. So that's going to be a problem. And we're going to find out, through the Annapolis Convention, that eventually we're not going to be able to get 13 to agree to change anything, which is going to ultimately destroy the Articles of Confederation. So kind of that's the good and the bad. I'm going to get pregnant, Northwest Ordinance of 1787. The inflexibility of the Articles, 9 out of 13 to pass a law, but more importantly, 13 out of 13 states to agree to change that baby, which makes it completely inflexible. You really can't, move forward and change things. And, the structural aspect itself. The idea that there's no president, there's no tax system, there's no court, there's no military, there's no paper money, is all going to make it for kind of a bad scene later on. So let me go get the ugly, and then we're going to be done. Ugly! Miss Ugly, where are you? I found it. It's the ugly. The ugly is in the idea of Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion, many exams I've seen that on in New York State, the Regents, and other exams. They want you to know Shays' Rebellion. In a sense, Shays' Rebellion is really like the kind of the match that's going to set those articles on fire. We've already put the wood down. We've put all of those kind of bad aspects and weak aspects and inflexible aspects of the article that's kind of like kindling with gas on it. All you really need is a spark or something to light that afire. And that was Shays' Rebellion. In the state of Massachusetts, Shay was a former Revolutionary War soldier, and he was a little PO'd. He was a little upset that what he felt the government wasn't doing Massachusetts for him, that he was paying taxes, and he really didn't feel that he had proper representation, that he felt he was owed debt from the Revolutionary War. He really thought, in a sense, that the government wasn't doing well by him. So the Declaration teaches you that if the government isn't giving you, your natural right, protecting your natural rights, or is abusing its power, that you should, force it to change. Whether that's through nonviolence or maybe violence, the Revolutionary War. So Shay and his band of followers basically march on the Capitol, basically demanding change, demanding, representation, more representation, and demanding some recourse to their debt problems. So the concept is that, almost if you can be the governor of Massachusetts and look out the window and see this kind of angry mob coming towards you, and you kind of getting a little nervous, you think maybe this is it, maybe they're going to cut my head off. So you grab the phone, and who do you call? You call your daddy. You call the federal government. You call the entity that is there to protect you. And what do you hear on the other end? Boop, 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 1-800-CONGRESS. Uh-oh. They're not going to be able to help. There's hardly anyone on the other end. They have no army. They have no tax power. They had to ask the states for help to go help another state. And it's not that Shays' Rebellion cuts heads off. And it's not that Shays' Rebellion is successful. Eventually they are, captured and they are charged, and I think later some were pardoned, maybe some were executed. I'm not an expert on Shays' Rebellion. But what I do know is that it scared the hell out of some people. It scared the hell out of people like Alexander Hamilton and people that had power and land and money, because this really represented the fear of a lot of property owners, was that the day might be coming where they come for us. So we need a federal government with more power. Hence they wrote the Federalist Papers, which are going to argue for a new constitution. So that's the ugly Shays' Rebellion. Eventually the states end up in Annapolis, Maryland at a meeting. It's called the Annapolis Convention, the Annapolis meeting, where they try to scratch their heads and figure out what are we going to do. So they decide that they're really going to have a convention to change this baby majorly. At Rhode Island, you didn't even show up to the Annapolis Convention. So when you don't show up to the Constitutional Convention, and you need all 13 to be there to make any changes, that's it. Articles of Confederation, poof, goodbye. So I hope that you learned something about the Articles of Confederation. If you learned anything, hopefully you know what federalism is, and now you can say with me that the Articles of Confederation sucked because the feds were too... You did it. Good for you. All right, guys. We'll see you in another video lecture. Keep studying, and good for you. See you later.